No bailouts for Toronto real estate market despite whatever the government says, and the government actions will always fall short. Stay tuned to find out exactly what I mean. Promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. So glad you could join me here today. Before I give you my reactions to all the things that are happening right now, I want to give you a little brief, like 1 or 2 minute snippet of what I'm seeing in the market before the TREB stats do come out probably in the next few days, and I'll be giving you a full market review about that on Thursday. But here's a brief synopsis of what I think is happening when the numbers do come out. I pulled up here the all the March numbers for the last like 10 plus years, and you can see that everything on the right hand side over here is almost essentially green, except for 08 and 2020. And 08 was the great financial crisis, and 2020 was the pandemic, right? So you can see that we don't have 2022 yet, but I had a sneak peek of some of the numbers already, and we're actually coming down on average price. So this means that this could be one of those years with an anomaly, because you can see that on the right-hand side, generally it goes up as spring market hits. But I think we may have had the spring market early. We'll see when the numbers come out, but just something to give you an idea of what's going on. You can see here that it's very weird if prices do come down, and I think they are going to be coming down from month to month. Now, it's not saying the world is crashing. It's just that the average price has come down. And I'll talk more about that in April. But the two other things you got to watch out for is on April 7th, the federal budget is coming out from the Liberals. So this is if you're waiting for the down payment being increased to 30% for investors, or if there's going to be reduction on the use of HELOC or refinances for investment properties, that may be coming out. On top of that, if you want the uninsured mortgage from 1 million to 1.25, that may be coming out in the federal budget as well. And then the following week on April 13th, Bank of Canada will make the announcement for the interest rate hike, whether it happens or not, or maybe it's 0.25 or 0.5. We'll find out. So there's a lot of things in flux right now. So that's why I want to take this episode to kind of give you a reaction on some of these kind of government interventions that will be likely coming to see in the short while, because 'tis the season of election, which means lots of stuff being thrown at you, right? So let's get to the first article right here. A lot of people are talking about this, which is Ontario cracking down on foreign real estate speculation with more comprehensive non-resident speculation tax in Canada. So in short, basically they just upped the foreign buyer tax from 15% to 20%. And instead of being just in the golden horseshoe, it's all of Ontario. Look, if they really wanted to do something about this, they would have done it a lot earlier. While I do think there's a component of real estate that's being bought by foreign ownership, I don't think this is going to change anything like in the market, but I do applaud that when you scroll down to some of the things that they changed is they changed some of the loopholes over here. So it used to be that if you were a student, you could get away with it. Now they removed that exemption, but if you do become a permanent citizen or resident in the future, you can get that back as a rebate. And also they removed that anyone who is a non-resident, if your name is on the title, then obviously this 20% applies. So yes, it sounds like they're doing something, but in reality, I don't think it's going to do much, right? So that's just, again, government's trying to do something, look like they're trying to do something to say, hey, look, we're tackling housing affordability, but too little, too late, not going to do much anyways, right? Next one. We got Ford government unveils plans to fix soaring Ontario housing prices, but not everything's on the table. So if you aren't familiar with what everything on the table is, I think a month ago or so, I talked about how there's like 55 recommendations about how to make housing affordable. And it was like done by the Ontario Affordability Task Force, or some kind of new group that they made. And they finally put out some of the bills saying what's going to be there, what's not. And remember, this is all in advance of the provincial election in June, and the provinces can control how quickly and slowly things get pushed through, like in terms of development, right? So when you kind of go through a lot of this stuff, you're going to kind of see that not everything that's important or effective actually is on the table, like the article is saying, right? So the most important thing that I found was going to be most useful for increasing supply in the report that they came out, the 55, was to upzone, meaning that every single family home was allowed to go from one single unit to 4, and that's off the table, right? So you can see here that it didn't go over very well with the mayors of the 905 suburban areas, right? So these are your surrounding York region, Peel region, and Durham region. That's the one that's surrounding it, I forgot about, right? So if it didn't go over well, then obviously they're not going to want to kind of push it through, because you can see what I said here, that the key battlegrounds on the upcoming provincial election could be in the suburbs. So pandering for votes, these guys, I need their votes. They don't want to upzone. Therefore, oh, you know what? Let's take it off the table. This is a little bit of like NIMBYism, not in my backyard, right? So like anyone living in a suburban neighborhood, they're like, oh, hey, you know what? I don't want these condos or upzoning in my backyard, and I see it where I live too. So this is exactly what I was trying to get at. Pandering vote, they're going to do what they can, but really this bill does nothing, right? At the end of the day, this whole like thing that's on the table is just trying to reduce the delay and speed up the process. And as much as they're going to try, I think it's just going to look like they're trying. I think this is also going to equate into nothing. If it does become something and reduces delay, fantastic. But at the moment, nothing. Then we got the next one here. The Trudeau government votes down promise ban on foreign home buyers. So I wrote about this in my newsletter, and if you aren't subscribed to that, you can check it out by clicking on the link in the description. It'll be the first one. And essentially, this is kind of an example. I want to show you how it's always going to be a lot of talk come election season, but when it comes to action, I've seen this so many times. And like I told you, I don't follow politics. I'm not very into politics. I just kind of look at it for the real estate purposes because it does affect the market and the sentiment. But at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. And there's just all words right now. So back in 2021, last year, when the Liberals called for the election, right? Or in 2019, actually. Oh yeah, right here. 2015, Trudeau promises housing affordability for Canadians, right? So that's when he first ran. And then in 2019, it doesn't happen. We know prices have doubled since then. And then last year, they said that they're going to ban foreign ownership, right? On the last election. So when you look at this right here, they said that the House of Commons voted 6-5, rejecting the Conservatives for banning home ownership. So if they were going to say, oh, hey, let's ban foreign ownership so that there's no more speculation in the market, why did they just ban it? Do you see what I mean? Like all these words that I keep seeing in headlines is cool story, bro. But until I actually see action, it's just a nothing burger, like as always, right? So that's why all these things I'm telling you about, just think critically about what it's going to happen. It sounds great. It's trying to get your vote, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be doing anything, or at the very least, if they at least have the intention to, let's see some action first, right? Kind of like in Quebec, there is a $500 kind of rebate or gift to you because of inflation. Let's be real, that's just trying to buy your vote, right? If this is the type of real estate content you enjoy, make sure to help us spread the knowledge by smashing the like button and subscribing to the Prime Property channel, because every week we make awesome content like this, specifically this week where it's kind of controversial because politics, right? So that you can be informed in what the heck is happening in the real estate market right now. So that whenever you're ready to buy, sell, or invest, you'll be like, Zhen and his team, they know what they're talking about, and you want to work with us on our real estate team so that you will make the right decision for yourself, right? Because there's a lot of chatter out there. And if you do want to work with us, you can book a call with me specifically to kind of chat about strategy and whether it makes sense for you to buy, sell, or invest. And you can do so by clicking on the link or typing it in, www.chatwithzen.com. It's right here on the screen. Back to the next headline here. We got Ontario Premier says construction underway for new Toronto subway line. Again, think about timing of this. Isn't this rather convenient? Again, I have nothing against Liberals, nothing against PC, right? Whatever, it's just convenient. So down here, they're saying that the construction for the Ontario line, for anyone who's not familiar, it's running from basically Exhibition, CNE, all the way to the Science Center that cuts across Osgoode and Quay, which is going to be great. And there's a whole lot of people talking about how they're going to build out the east side of downtown by Corktown. Wonderful. Love it, love it. Really should be doing that a lot. Like, I haven't been to China in 15 years since I came here, and they built like 10 subways. But, since I've been here, we've built 2, Shepherd and Vaughan. So I'm glad to see a third one. In regards to all of this stuff, like, it's very much like cool, very cool. I will see it when I believe it, like shovels on the ground. The one thing I will point out to that's kind of a pain is for anyone who's driving or even being in downtown is Queen and Yonge is going to be congested for what sounds like 3 to 4 years. I personally think it's longer, and I'm going to give you an example. I remember when I was younger, they were trying to build the LRT for Eglinton. For anyone who doesn't know right now, that's the thing cutting across Eglinton from past Don Valley all the way into Mount Dennis. And if you look here, it says that it broke ground in 2011. So right now, if construction started, they were supposed to finish in 2019. It is now 2022. They are 3 years behind. And I've driven by Eglinton LRT many times, and there are lots of parts that look like it is not finished at all. So this whole, Ontario line is going to be finished in, what does it say, 2030? Right here, yeah, they said that it's expected to be up and running by 2030. Yeah, let's be real, not happening. Right, and the last thing I'm going to talk about, that's another provincial legislation that's coming, is this is happening in BC, so be very clear, it's not happening in Ontario yet, but a lot of the things that happen in British Columbia does make their way into into Ontario, and this is something that happens all the time, even with like the foreign buyer tax, vacancies tax, and all that stuff. And what they're basically proposing is that they're going to put like a cooling off period for all purchases. So if you ever bought a pre-construction, you would know that there is a 10-day cooling period, 10 regular days, meaning that if you sign on a dotted line, you have 10 days to go back to the building and be like, hey, I don't want it anymore, and you can give it back, no questions asked, and you get your deposit back. However, they're trying to do this for the resale side, which means that if you were to go buy a property, and maybe, I think it's specifically geared towards the kind of multiple offer situation right now, then you could basically be, hey, you know what? I got caught up in the heat of the moment. I don't want this property anymore. I'm going to give it back. Then the seller is going to sell it. Now, there's some logistical issues with that if you think it through. Again, I'm not saying good or pro for it. Like, I think the real estate market will probably figure it out. And I know some people are up in arms about it. My 2 cents, it's going to be a gong show, and more so from a logistics perspective. Let me just give you my thinking. Now, from a builder side, that like purchase agreement is like thick, like 3 C's thick. So it's great for you to have a lawyer to review it. But the resale side, generally it's a stated language that's very, standardized, right? And if you do put the 10-day cooling period in, it kind of says, oh, hey, you know what? I got caught up, I'm backing out. Then what happens is that the seller has to resell the property again. And then there's very likelihood that that person is probably not going to buy something. And there's a whole bunch of inventory delayed. So that's one of the logistic problems. And number 2 is if you're holding offers, then if someone doesn't back out, okay, then you have to resell it. But if this is a mandatory thing, right, couldn't someone just waive it again like a condition? Because right now in multiple offers, you waive your financing condition, inspection, and some other stuff that you may have, right? So someone who's ready to go and who's done their due diligence, they could just waive that themselves, which would make it so much more competitive. So wouldn't that also just make it a moot point? You see what I mean? So like just logistically thinking through some of these things are kind of like problematic. I think I'm all for having maybe like if you're going to hold offers, have a mandatory like set of documents you got to do. So like don't accept bully offers. So that everyone has time to do it. Then you also maybe make sure the inspection is mandatory by like certain companies at the very least, or so that gives people time to kind of review it. I think those 2 things are probably a better thing to mandate than to say, hey, you can back out in the last 10 days, because I think that's just going to cause havoc in the resale market, because then maybe the person who came in second is going to be like, oh, maybe these guys are going to back out, then they hold up. It's just a whole logistic nightmare if they have it. But again, we'll see, because British Columbia will be the guinea pig. So those are all the headlines I have for you guys today. But again, it's more mainly to kind of draw attention to and provide you some critical thinking about all the stuff that's happening right now, because it is the season for government talk, intervention, things coming in, because election season's coming up. You just got to think about what's going to happen. If you are kind of like on the sideline right now and just waiting, that's perfectly fine, because there are a lot of changes happening, whether it be the Bank of Canada increasing interest rate or decreasing or staying in the next 2 weeks, or the federal policy. Makes total sense. But if you are looking for kind of like some real estate help on how to navigate all this, whether it's the right time for you, you want to wait a little bit, you can book a call to have a strategy chat with me, Zhen, using the link right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.